Yeah, what's good, guys? So today is like the most impromptu stream ever. Like I don't even expect anybody to join me on this stream. I'm pretty sure you guys will watch this stream later. But the second I saw this news, I had to say something. I couldn't just, I'm just scrolling through my just internet and I come across the story. Actually, I was scrolling through YouTube. I'm lying. I was scrolling through YouTube and I come across the stories, and I have to check it out again. So I never heard of this person before. I did a little tiny bit of research on her, and she was on The Voice. So she was one of the contestants on The Voice, and apparently she decides to go from being on The Voice to being in a rock band, which is whatever, good for her. Based off the world's accomplishments, that's a big accomplishment for her. And she's at some NASCAR race. And you know what's funny about these NASCAR? This is the second thing we've been talking about. This is the second NASCAR event we've been talking about in two streams. I don't know. Think crazy things happen at NASCAR races. Apparently, I don't, I wouldn't know. I'm up here in the north. I'm up here in New York City. I've never been to a NASCAR race in my life, but pretty crazy things happen. I know that usually they have an event before the race, and that's where Mrs. Sophia, and I hope I don't mispronounce her name, Urista, being the lead singer of a band, is performing when out of nowhere she decides that she's going to pee on a fan's face. Now, let's be fair. I'm not going to put all the blame on Mrs. Sophia Urista, because it takes two. All right, it takes two. You don't just casually just get peed on. Like you gotta be to a certain extent permissive of allowing yourself to get peed on. So that in itself is problematic. That the man who allowed himself to get peed on, but apparently he got peed on stage by her. She put down her pants, and I'm not gonna show the video today because this is not that type of YouTube channel. We don't show explicit videos on this YouTube channel. Maybe if this is a different YouTube channel, I'm pretty sure you guys can find a video online if that's something that you want to fancy, even though I don't know who would fancy watching somebody else get peed on. That in itself seems a little bit weird. But the whole point of the story is that she decided to urinate on a man's face. Now, why am I even going on? Why am I even doing this as a story? People are like, what does God do with Christianity? Well, a verse that I like to come to when it comes to stuff like this is, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this, is Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20, where it says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And that's the world we live in today. The world we live in today has, for the longest time, been substituting light for darkness, to the extent where someone feels like it's okay, it's justifiable because they have a little bit of clout, because they're somewhat well known or whatever, that they can go start peeing on their fans' faces. Now, I'm not of this world, but I'm gonna tell you right now, the world's not giving me a good argument to be a part of it. When the one concert last month, we see Travis Scott, 10 people died, and in this concert, we see a female pissing on a fan. That's not a good argument. But what you see is that a lot of people have come to her defense. And you could be like, well, objectively, how could this be okay? How can someone come to the defense of somebody who got pissed on? Well, it's because the argument is, well, if it was a man, they would say the argument has been that there's been other rock stars that peed on people before. They have been men, and that those men have never gotten in trouble for it. See the problem here? The problem here is that one is saying, look, this is a form of female empowerment. The fact that she's allowed to piss on her fan is her showing her empowerment, her showing her strength over the man. The man was submissive in that scenario, and she was taking power. And it's like, no, you cannot spin this in a way that you can talk about female empowerment. Only way you can spin it into it is in a way of just saying, you know what? That's nasty. That's nasty. But people have come to her defense, and I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and I'm gonna show you the article that I'm talking about how people have literally said, "Well, it's okay, it's all right, it's perfectly fine if she does it." Like, and it's no, it's not okay for anybody to do it. Let's keep it a stack. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. It's not okay for you to be pissing on anybody. Um, and shame on the dude. Shame on the dude who decided to say, you know what, I'm gonna allow myself to be put in this situation. Like, but like, at what point do you not have respect for yourself? You know what I'm saying? So at what point, again, we're not gonna watch the video, so I'm just gonna skip through the video. But the highlight here is Sophia Urista apologizes for peeing on the fan, insists that she's not a shock artist. For those who don't know what a shock artist is it's an artist that tries to essentially do that. They're trying to entertain by using shock value. So she does something that's a shock value thing, and then she says she's not a shock artist, and that was never her intention. So what exactly was your intention, Mrs. Sophia Urista? What exactly was your intention? So this is the girl, this is the artist. Obviously, I never heard about her, but this is what I wanted to focus on. So one fan says, please don't apologize for being a rock star. You're awesome. Oh man, this world's scary. This world's scary. People justify, and it's not surprising. Last month with the Travis Scott concert, people were justifying why Travis Scott should be perfectly fine. Like this, Travis Scott shouldn't face any repercussions or anything like that. It's not Travis's fault, not at all. And here, so if people can justify 10 people dying, why am I surprised if people are trying to justify somebody pissing on somebody else? Because objectively, somebody pissing on somebody is way less than somebody 10 people dying. So of course her fans come up to her defense. But here's a kicker. Some model, never heard of her, Camila Costa said, told her the pre-performance was amazing and awesome and the most punk rock thing I ever seen. Remember the verse I read to you guys earlier, Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. I'll read 21 too. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Let's keep that in mind. People are too sensitive, she wrote. Oh man, that's funny. It's funny when people say that asking for a little sense of morality is now sensitive. But if I were to go and question somebody based off a moral standpoint, let's say, for example, if I were to specifically say based off the Bible, homosexuality is a sin, they would say that I'm being insensitive. But I'm being insensitive when I call out sin. But here specifically, and here, right here, in this specific scenario, in this specific case, I'm being sensitive because I find this to be impulsive. She wrote claiming if it was a man, if it was a man would be okay. So that's terrible grammar. If was a man would be okay. If they were white, OMG would be so fine. F everyone, I love you. So notice how the things are justified. They're justifying because they say, well, Camila is a woman of Hispanic descent or Latina descent. I don't play with the Latinx stuff. I'm Latino. I do not play with the Latinx thing, so I'm not going to call you Latinx. It is a woman of Latina descent. And this woman of Latina descent, because she is a woman and Latina, we are calling her out on her, and we are bigots for doing it. We are insensitive. We are bigots. We are not letting her shine because we are calling out this moral depravity, and because we're calling it out, she shouldn't be called out because she's a woman. She should get a free pass to do whatever she wants. That's problematic. That's scary. Oh, they didn't want to show it anymore because we're not that type of channel. That's explicit. So one singer wrote, came for the pee, stay for the music. you see how we joke about these things? You see how people are joking about these type of things? They're joking because they want to normalize it. Oh, somebody even did more research. Thank you, Snow Angel. She's 35 years old. So not only is this a situation where it's somebody who, or anybody, you don't got to be 35 to know you shouldn't be pissing on people. I'll tell you, a teenager should know you shouldn't be pissing on somebody. A 12-year-old knows you shouldn't be pissing on somebody. But this is a 35-year-old woman thinking that it is okay in any state of mind to go down, pull her pants, squat down, and take a leak on a man's face. And I'm not excusing the man in this situation, because in this situation, what you're going to see here is what happens when we put people on a pedestal. And now here I'm speaking specifically to my men in the crowd. Men in the crowd. We should not be putting females on a specific pedestal. Now, that does not mean that we do not respect women. That does not mean that we do not showcase, we do not treat women with class. That doesn't even mean that we view them as unequal to us. What I'm trying to say is we should never put somebody on top or ahead of us or above us and put ourselves as less than. Because the reality is that we are all human. And not only are we all human, the only person that can necessarily look down upon you or say that you're less than is God. That's the only person that should be doing that. So this man has a lower self-esteem because he thought it was okay for this to happen. This is a man that's struggling with some sort of some self-esteem issue. This is a young man that is struggling with his own perception of being loved and being in respect. Because no man who respects himself will put themselves in that. I wouldn't even say no man. No person that respects themselves should put themselves in that situation. American creationists, you said it best. They're simping. And what's been created in our nation in particular, I can only speak about America, is a nation of simp culture, where it is okay to become a simp. Like, that is normalized. And for the people who are holy of holies and don't know what a simp is somebody that puts a specific person, most oftentimes is the man putting a woman, on a pedestal to the point that they believe that that person can do nothing wrong, that person is perfect in their eyes, and that person is above them. And because they believe that person is above them, what they will do is that they will allow that person to get away with almost anything criminal. And we see that a lot, for example, with the OnlyFans culture, with people who are subscribing to OnlyFans, where they will go pay a person to have a symbiotic relationship where they are talking to this person, they're giving this person finances so they can have access to this person as kind of like a pseudo type girlfriend or boyfriend. When in reality, that person knows nothing about that person, know nothing about you, doesn't necessarily care about you, but is making their ways into your wallet. And that is something that is found as justifiable, it's found as okay, it's found as something it's found as something that's normalized. That's why when people talk about normalizing sex work, they're talking specifically about OnlyFans. They're talking about allowing people to do whatever type of work they do in OnlyFans, and that being normalized, and that being legal, and that being as something to not be looked down upon or shameful. And what happens is that it created a culture of men, and I want to say specifically men because I can only speak for myself, who have allowed them, who are not deciding to be leaders in any situation, but are taking a more effeminate role in every aspect of their lives. So they're taking an effeminate roles in their household. They're taking an effeminate role in just life in general, in any aspect of life. They're taking an effeminate role. And because they're taking an effeminate role, they're allowing for a situation where women are now necessarily leading society. Now, am I saying do I have a problem with a woman boss? No, not necessarily. I have women bosses. I don't care about whether my boss is a woman or not. What I am saying is that we are in a situation where all the natural, where men who title is called to be a natural born leader. Remember that the man is the head of the household. They have taken a back seat in the name of equality, and then it hasn't even become a situation of equality. It has become a situation where women have put themselves above men and oftentimes have put down men for that same situation. And I think that's the issue that we have. I think that's the issue that we have with our generation. Our generation has tried to overcompensate, overcorrect to the point where they are necessarily justifying this as this is okay. I don't find this okay for anybody to do. I didn't find it okay when R. Kelly did it. I didn't find, nobody found, like, look, again, Camila's sitting here and she's saying, well, if it was a man, it would be okay. But nobody found it okay when R. Kelly did it. Nobody said, oh yeah, R. Kelly did it. That's no big deal. So why should we find it okay when this woman does it? Again, we're sitting here, we're talking about equality, and we're not even practicing what equality is. We're sitting here, we're talking about certain things being okay, certain actions being okay, but all it does is be in a situation where you have people literally degrading other people. And that's the thing that gets me mad, because this man was degraded publicly. And even though he may say that that's okay, it's not okay. Just because somebody say it's okay doesn't make it okay. Like, imagine somebody who's been physically abused or emotionally abused, or I'm talking about women in specifically. Just because a woman who's been physically or emotionally abused says that it's okay, that doesn't mean that it's okay. It just means that they've gotten accustomed to that situation. So during those situations where the person is being permissive to something that's not okay, people have to stand up and say, look, no, that's not okay. And that person that's allowing that necessarily needs to seek some sort of help. And that's why when I point stuff like this out, I'm pointing it out in contrast to the Bibles, because the fact of the matter is that we're living in such dark days that stuff like this is just passed around as norm, and it's passed around as normalized. Passed around as something that you can justify. Passed around as something where her fans are saying, you know, instead of her fans being like, yeah, that's nasty and repulsive, they're like, well, we love you. That was great. That was a great show. You really are a shock artist. I can't wait to see what you'll do next. I can't wait till you see what you do next. It's sad. It's scary. And when you call things out, you're viewed as insensitive. That's the part that saddens me. When you call things that are wrong, they are viewed as insensitive, intolerant. You're viewed as not being understanding, when the reality is that we got to call something wrong. Like, that's the problem when we say that I'm living my truth, you're living your truth. Then what is the truth? What is right? What is wrong? That's why we have to call these things out. That's why this video had to go up. And no, I'm not going to put up the fetish video because it's nasty. But that's why we have to call it out. And that's why I had to go and do an impromptu live stream. I was chilling. I was in my house. I got off work early today, so I'm in my house. Chilling. And this comes up and I'm like, nah. Yeah. Loyalty, I hope you agree with us. Yes, it's wrong and wronger. All the things that we see is wrong and wronger. And it's going to continue to get worse. So we're going to continue to see these type of things. They call it a fetish. They call it whatever. They call it whatever to clean it up. They'll justify it by saying that it's sex work, and they'll say that sex work is the oldest, or they call prostitution the oldest job. And it's like, I don't care what type of job it is. Like, you could say sex work is the oldest job, but you know what is older than sex work? Murder. Are we justifying things just because of how old they are? Right? Cain murdered Abel. That doesn't mean that, oh, because it's so old. We've been doing it since the beginning, since the Garden of Eden. Not the Garden of Eden. We've been doing it since chapter 3 or chapter 4 of the Bible. Oh, it should be okay. Sophia Urista. So sad. It's sad. I don't even got words to say it. But I know that I'm gonna be probably coming up here and doing impromptu live streams. A lot of stuff like this happens. But man, Nobody can tell me that going to a non-Christian concert could be worth it when in 1 month we got 10 people dying, another month we got a woman peeing on a man. Nobody can tell me that. Nobody can tell me it's okay. Guys, be ready, is what I would say. Be ready. Be ready. Be ready. Because the world's gonna start justifying this stuff. The world's gonna start seeing these things that okay. Because you know what the world's gonna say? The world's going to say, I don't know why I got a dry cough right now, so I apologize for all the times I'm coughing. The world's going to make it seem that if something's permissible, if one person allows something, then we shouldn't bother telling that person if that's right or wrong. That's what the world's that's what the world's heading to. The world's in this place where if two people consent to something, regardless of how disgusting it is, it's okay. There's nothing, regardless of how incorrect it is, it's okay. And that's what we need to fear. That's what we need to concern ourselves. And for the people who say, what made them think it's a good idea? I'll tell you what will make you think it's a good idea. It's because he has very low self-esteem. And that's the saddest part about it, is that she took advantage of that man. She took an advantage. Like, the man said yes. And I don't know how old he is, but he clearly is not in the right state of mind. He's not in the right state of mind. Anybody that allows themselves to get peed on is not in the right state of mind. Because that's not a fetish. That's not something that somebody that's not even something normal that somebody will naturally want sexually. That's just something that there's something mentally wrong there. And he needs to seek mental help. So the second that man asked to be peed on, she should have said, you know what, brother, you need mental help. And if she really cared about him, she really loved him, she would seek mental help for him. But no, that's not what the world does. The world just says, you know what, that's what they wanted. And that's why, honestly, we have such an increase in levels of depression and anxiety and all these mental health things, because too many people, instead of recognizing that they need mental health, are just saying, well, this is how I was born, or this is how I live, and you got to accept me for me, and not actually understand that maybe there is something that is off in my situation. Maybe I do need to talk to somebody. Maybe I do need to seek Jesus. Maybe I do need to turn my life around. Nope. At the end of the day, what the world tells them is, you're fine. You're good. This is fine. And the reason why I bring this up is I know that I know that people that Sophia Urista is gonna go past this, blow past this, and she's probably gonna perform at a different event. Period. Because as Michelle says, beautiful. People are indifferent. People don't care. Like, stuff like this, people don't care about. People just sit there and they just like, yeah, I wouldn't have let her done it, but that's just me. If they want to do, who cares? That's how people act. People are indifferent, man. Yeah. And you're right, Loyalty. A lot of this stuff, and this is a good point to go off before I end this live stream, because I got to pick up my son. I'm telling you, this live stream was very impromptu. It's a great point, Loyalty. A lot of this stuff has been introduced through pornography. 100%. As a young man who struggled with pornography, who still has to put his hedges to make sure that pornography isn't something that he falls into as a young man, I will tell you that the biggest thing about pornography is that it desensitizes you to normal stuff. You start looking for weirder and weirder stuff to get the same high, the same sensation that you had before. So before, you may have started just by looking at a magazine, right? And I'll tell you this, for me personally, like, I started off looking at a magazine or like just pictures. And at a certain point, I wasn't just doing it for me. I was like, I gotta find something harder than that. And then you started going deeper, and you say, well, I gotta keep finding this. I gotta keep doing this, or find this, or find this, or find this, to go and fulfill what I want. And then it gets weirder and weirder and more perverse and more disgusting, because there is a group, because people who are deep into the pornography scene are so desensitized to normal stimulation that they need to find something else to stimulate their lives. It intensifies to the point that you're like, what am I even watching? Why do I even like this? So that is what's happened. Thank you, Lloyd. That's a great point. We're talking about things get normalized because of it's a trap. It's a rabbit hole. And it's crazy because I don't think pornography is officially yet an addiction. Like, I don't think pornography falls like people can be porn addicts, but the same thing as social media. Social media is technically not an addiction, even though people have experienced the shaking, the shakes, the having to check all the time. Technically, pornography isn't an addiction. They will say, but anybody that's been in pornography or has watched pornography can tell you firsthand that it is an addiction, and it's something that you constantly want a new high of, and it's constantly something that you're looking forward to each day. And then there are many people that have lost their jobs, many people that have lost time with their friends, many people have lost their relationships, many people that have lost their family units because of pornography. So you cannot tell me that pornography is a sickness, or you cannot tell me pornography is an addiction. But here's the point that I'm trying to make: is that this man, low self-esteem, might have been watching some porn, starts watching much more weirder and darker stuff that like even even hardcore porn addicts would be like, well, that's a little weird. And he sees his opportunity to go and finally fulfills his fantasy, and he gets this fantasy from this girl and she agrees on it, and she pees on his face. And I'm pretty sure the second that it happened, he didn't get it. He wasn't like, yes, this is what I wanted. I hope he had a moment of clarity, and he said, you know what, that was actually kind of disgusting. That's what I hope. I hope that woke up. I hope that golden stream woke him up and he said, you know, that was actually low key not what I wanted from this situation. But it is crazy because the enemy continues to dangle that carrot in front of your face. The enemy continues to dangle and say, hey, this is what you want. This is the high you need. This is what you're looking for. And eventually when you get it, you're like, man, that's it. That's all it was. And then the enemy's, yeah, I know it wasn't worth it, right? But look at this. Now, if that wasn't worth it, this is definitely worth it. Go after this. So the enemy keeps moving in addiction. The enemy keeps moving the goalposts, where you're never going to be satisfied. And I end with this. The only thing that can satisfy you in the way that you are looking to be satisfied is Jesus. Because Jesus is rivers of living water. That's what the Bible calls it, rivers of living water. And when Jesus said, whoever drinks from me will never drink again. And I find it funny that I find it coincidental, or I know Jesus does it on purpose, that oftentimes we call somebody who is searching thirsty, like you're thirsty for that female, or you're thirsty for that person, or you're thirsty for that situation. And Jesus says, look, you will never thirst again in the Bible. See, Jesus over 2,000 years ago knew that situations like this would arise. And he said, look, you will never thirst again. You'll never thirst again. And he says, drink from me, eat from me, and you will be satisfied. And that is what I tell people today. That's what I tell that young man. That's what I tell that young lady, that you need Jesus, and you need to figure out that the fact of the matter is that Jesus tells you that you will never thirst again, because he is the reason why we were created. And when you figure out that the reason why you were created was to glorify him and not to glorify your body, not to glorify yourself, you will live a life much more satisfactory. So that is the words that I leave you guys with today. That is the message I leave you guys with today. And don't get peed on. Please. Please don't get peed on. God bless you guys. I'll see you guys on Sunday, God willing.